Hello and welcome to Katie's final project of Algebra 2, and I'm going to start out with 5 ways to be successful in Algebra 2, and that is take really good notes to look on when studying for a test, do practice assignments, go to tutoring if you need help, study for quizzes, and most importantly, do all of your homework. If you follow these 5 steps, you will be set for Algebra 2. The first thing I'm going to begin on from quarter 1 is scatter plots and regression. Scatter plots and regression are just the trends of data that is given to you. The equation for scatter plots is y equals ax plus b, and b is the slope and a is the y-intercept. And the scatter plots identify relationships between two things. A positive scatter plot graph goes up and negative goes down. The line you see here is the regression line that determines whether it is positive or it is negative. And the two things that are being determined is part of the scatter plots. And the points that you get on here will determine whether it's positive or negative as well, but you can put that in your calculator by stat edit. And the regression lines show the trend of scatter plots. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is quadratic functions. This is another part of quarter 1, and the equation for quadratic functions is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Whew, long equation. And there's different quadratic functions. There's a positive and there's a negative. The positive has a minimum point, which means that the very bottom, minimum means like in the negative, like y's, just say in the negatives. And the very end, the end where the parabola ends is the vertex, and the 2 points right here that touch the x-axis are the x-intercepts, and those are the 2 points that intersect the y-axis. And if it's negative, you have a maximum point, and the vertex is at the top. And the dashed line you see right here is the line that divides the parabola into 2. And the domain of the quadratic functions is all real numbers, and the range is from negative infinity to infinity, or it just depends on the parabola that is given to you, whether it intersects the y or x-axis. That's the quadratic functions, one of the ones I had a harder time with because I always mixed up minimum and maximum, but just make sure to study your notes and you'll do fine. Now moving on to quarter 2, intro to factoring. Factoring is very simple. This was one of the easier tasks for me. If you have something set up like this, use the FOIL method, which is first in, last out. And you just go first in and then last out. You just distribute these numbers over here. And you get 12x squared minus 5x minus 2 for this one right here. And a way to set that up is you can do the box method, where you have your two factors and you put them on top and you put these on the side. And that's where you can join them, and then you get your numbers, and that's how you get the factors for 4x minus 1 and 3x minus 2. These are the factors right here for this equation. And I did another one down here, which you can see, which is 5x minus 3 and x minus 2, and that comes out to be 5x squared minus 13x plus 6. And when you do the box method, these are the different factors you get for this equation. The next thing I'll be talking about is complex numbers. This was kind of a harder, more difficult concept for me to grasp. And how complex numbers are set up is x plus I, y. X and y are real numbers and I is imaginary. The real numbers for this is, real numbers are just like 1, 12.38, 3/4, so just numbers that are just common, and imaginary numbers is 1 plus I or 39 plus 3i. The I in there is imaginary numbers, which means it doesn't really exist. Like imaginary doesn't exist. And one of the problems I have right here is square root of negative 144. And you don't really see that often because you see square root of 144, but you don't see square root of negative 144, which that would be equals to I square root of 144 equals 12i. Because the square root of 144 is 12, so since you have that I, you have to put the I right behind the 12. And the next one I have set up is square root of negative 25 equals 5i. So it's kind of like the same problem up here, and you just put 5i after that one because it's negative and it's imaginary. And then this one this one's more difficult. you have, it's kind of like the factoring method I just talked about, 3 plus 4i and times 3 minus 4i. You have to do first in, last out. One you get for that is 9 minus 12i plus 12i equals 16i squared. And when you see I squared, that just means negative 1. You just multiply it by negative 1. And that equals 9 minus 16 times negative 1 equals 9 plus 16 equals 25. So out of that big equation right there, you get 25. And moving on to quarter 3, we are talking about laws of exponents. In my previous project, I talked about laws of exponents, and this was more easier for me than other concepts I learned throughout the year. This was one of the easier ones. So what I have here is 2x squared, and 2 is the coefficient, x is a variable, and this 2 right here by the variable is the exponent. And the laws for it is multiply. If it's set up like this, it's multiply same base, but you add your exponents. It looks like you're going to multiply, but you just add. And you have x to m divided by x to n equals x parentheses m minus n, and you just divide same base but subtract exponents. And you have, if it's raised to a power, you multiply, and if it's 0 power, it just equals 1. So my first problem I have right here is 2r to the third and 5 squared parentheses to 0 equals 1. No matter what you see, it equals 1. And when you have this one down, I have one of the dividing ones, and since they have the same base, you divide 49 divided by 7, and then you subtract the exponents, and so that's when you get 7 squared. Like I said, this is one of the easier ones. You just have to remember to do your laws, remember your laws, and study. The next problem, which this was really difficult for me to, I was constantly looking at notes, and so hopefully this will help you guys out a little bit. It's multiplying divide rational expressions. You have to factor out the two expressions. Whenever it is on one side, has to go on the other side. So if you have, when you factor out these two expressions right here, you get 2x squared times 4x minus 1. That goes to the top expression. And when you have x times 4x minus 1, that goes to the bottom expression. And see, both top and bottom both have 4x minus 1, so you don't need to do anything. But since you have both of them, you need to cross them out. And that equals 2x squared divided by x equal. And since you already have an x squared on top and you have x on bottom, you can take one x away, and that equals 2x divided by 1, which just equals 2x. Remember, anything divided by 1 is just the same as this. Same as it is on top. So for this problem, you get 2x. For the bottom one, that was a little bit more difficult to solve, but I did it. And so you'd have 4x squared minus 4x divided by x squared plus 2x minus 3 times x squared plus x minus 6 divided by 4x. Whew. And so when you factor these out right here, you get 4x times x minus 1 and x minus 1 times x plus 3, and you get x minus 2 for this one right here, x plus 3, and at the bottom you get 4x. And so since all of them can be canceled out because they all have the same except for x squared, since you cancel one out, the answer is x minus 2. All you have to do is just factor, and whatever goes on one side, whatever's on one side, it goes on the other side, and you just cancel out, and you have your answer. So for the last and final quarter, I'm going to be talking about base E and natural logs. Base E and natural logs is if y equals b to the x, then x equals log by. It's kind of like just switching it all around. And so if you have it set up like this, those are natural logs. That is natural log, and ln equals natural log. You can find that keystroke on your calculator as well, along with E. So what I have set up here is 3x plus 1 equals 8. And so when you put it into log form, you get this right here. You kind of just switch it all around. And so when you set it up, you have 3x plus 1 equals log 8 over log 6. And then you have to subtract 1 on both sides, so it's 3x equals log 8 over log 6 minus 1. And then for your final answer, since you have to divide by 3, you get x equals log 8 divided by log 6 minus 1 divided by 3. That is your answer for this whole problem right here. It's a little tricky, but you guys can do it. So now you have e negative x equals 2, which translates into log e2 equals negative x. You kind of just take the exponent and put it at the end when you put it into log form. And then the coefficient you have here, you always put it after log. Like I said, you just kind of switch it all around. Exponents go at the end, log, the coefficients go at the beginning. So for my last and final unit I'm going to be talking about is hyperbolas. And and so horizontal parabolas is set up as x minus h squared divided by a squared minus y minus k squared divided by b squared equals 1. The equation has to equal 1. And so a squared is always first. A squared has to always be first when you are solving these. And so this one right here is an example of a horizontal parabola. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And this right here is the vertex. Whatever's at the end of the hyperbola is the vertex. And these asymptotes right here, whenever the asymptotes cross, this is the center, which is h and k. And this is the length from the asymptote to the parabola, and this is from the center to the bottom. And then the domain, which is x and range is y. Domain is all real numbers and range is from negative infinity to infinity, but it also depends on the graph. And then when you have vertical parabolas, the equation from x and y switch. A squared and b squared stay the same, but x and y switch, and so does the graph. The graph just goes whoop, does like a complete 180. And so now you have the vertex being right here, and the center crosses, and you have b going this way and a going from the center to the vertex, and center is still h and k. This one was kind of difficult for me to kind of understand as well, just because there's so many different steps you have to take, and there's so many different things you have to point out and look for. So this is the end of my video. I hope you guys really enjoyed my lessons on the different units I loved and I did not love as much this year in Algebra 2. And don't forget the 5 ways to be successful in Algebra 2. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later.